PKP is running for the PQ, and the separatists are still wrong. That is the topic of tonight's byline. So I got back from Washington late Saturday night, and I was looking forward to a quiet day with the family on Sunday. Mass in the morning, a big Sunday dinner, all the usual rituals of home after nearly a week away. The one thing that I didn't want to deal with was politics. Pierre-Karl Péladeau's announcement that he was running for the Parti Québécois meant I would have to deal with politics. See, some people seem to think because the now former CEO and board member of Quebecor is now a separatist, well, we all are. Sun News and Sun Media are owned by Quebecor, but that doesn't mean we're separatists. Not now, not ever. Yes, I know Péladeau still owns the company. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that separatists are good and the election of the PQ would be a good thing. That simply won't happen. I happen to be married to a Quebecer, one who calls herself a Canadian first and foremost. Her whole family does. These are people that broke the land, farmed, built communities. They don't plan on leaving, and I don't want them to. But I also realize this isn't 1995 or 1980, and much of Canada is at the point of saying, look, we want you to stay, but we won't make you. If my former boss and his new political pals are successful in winning a majority and pushing for a referendum on separation, well, they shouldn't expect much in the way of negotiation if the Canadian people have their way. During the 2012 Quebec election, our friends at Abacus Data, they did an interesting poll. They asked English Canadians how they would vote if they could have a say on whether Quebec should stay or go. The majority, 52%, that's a slight majority, said they would vote to keep Quebec inside the country. 26% said they would vote for Quebec to leave. 22% weren't sure. Now, Abacus also asked whether Quebec should get special deals or if all provinces should be treated the same. 88% said all provinces should be treated the same, even if it risks upsetting Quebec and risks leading to separation. There's no longer any appetite, if there ever was one among regular people within the rest of Canada, for caving to Quebec's demands. Basically, if Quebec wants to stay, great. But if you really want to go, well, then go. In my view, this attitude's brought about by a bit of exhaustion. I mean, how many times can your kid threaten to move out or your girlfriend threaten to leave you before you say, if you must? If Quebec wants to leave, though, then they need to know that that means going ahead without a big $19.6 billion check coming from Canada, the federal government. In the 2014-2015 fiscal year, $7.4 million goes from the feds for the Canada Health Transfer, $2.9 billion for the Canada Social Transfer, and $9.2 billion for equalization. Well, that money will stop if Quebec leaves. As PKP told the world that he was a separatist yesterday, a move that surprised me, well, he also said Quebec has all it needs to survive on its own. Quote, Quebec has all the means to succeed. We have all the financial resources. We have human resources. We have natural resources. And that's a bit of dreaming, at least right now. Quebec's total budgetary revenues for the 2014-15 fiscal year, they're listed as $71.5 billion. Transfers from the feds, as I said, are $19.6 billion, or 27.4% of the provincial budget. Now, that doesn't include all the federal money spent in Quebec for things like culture, to subsidize French CBC, the subsidies to make French TV programs, magazines, and so on. All of that's going to end if Quebec leaves. Quebec will be poor. The rest of us might end up being richer, at least money-wise. Now, PKP thinks that Quebec has what it needs to survive and thrive, and money-wise, I've just shown you they don't. And the only way that changes is if they develop the oil and gas resources they have right now, but refuse to develop because, well, the rest of the country's subsidizing them. Do you think Quebec's very strong unions or far-left enviro groups that hold so much sway within the PQ will let that happen? Now, maybe a successful capitalist like Pierre-Karl can convince Quebecers to truly develop their economy, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I have no idea what motivated PKP's decision to throw his hat in the ring and fight for the separatist cause. But I do know it has tons wagging, and it has lots of people claiming that it will change what I say on this show and what we say on Sun News. It won't. Like most Canadians, I don't want Quebec to go, but I'm not willing to give in to every demand. Essentially, if they asked my opinion, I'd say, please stay. But if they choose to leave, I won't be begging them to stick around. And that's the byline.
J'invite M. Péladeau à vous adresser la parole.
All Quebec's election is tonight's top story, and covering that on his radio show and his perch as a QMI columnist, Eric Dehame joins us now. And Eric, this story definitely has tongues wagging all across the province, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a huge earthquake that happened on day 5 of the Quebec election yesterday, obviously. You know, we've never seen that in Quebec politics, that such a prominent business person decides to jump into a race. There's no precedence. They're trying to find what to do right now with Pierre-Karl Péladeau, and nobody can find anything to say or to do because we have never seen such a thing happening before. It's a game changer during the election campaign. The upcoming election on April 7th is now almost a quasi-referendum because everybody's going to vote yes or no on independence. The left and right split has no room anymore. We know that Pierre-Karl Péladeau is perceived as being much more right-wing. He's been involved as a big boss against unions for years. Yep. So it's not a left and right decision. Why he's going, and he said it very clearly yesterday, is because he wants Quebec to become a separate country. That's the first and only reason he went with his arm in the air and his eye in tears. He does truly believe that Quebec needs to become an independent country. And he can't stand around the Parti Québécois table of cabinet ministers for very long. He can't agree with the environmentalist on many issues or on the union activist on many issues. The only thing that puts them all together is the separatist dream or ideal, and they'll need to have a referendum in a very near future if they want their coalition to survive. So
you think that he'd be splitting that in terms of a left-right divide? In my view of Quebec politics, you have left, far left, hard left, and harder left. There is no centrist or right-wing party, despite what everyone wants to say about the CAQ. So he's joined not only a separatist party, but a far left party.
Absolutely, and he in the past had strong positions. I mean, he is perceived, and he is somebody who's we put on the right of the political spectrum right now. So it's going to be interesting to see the new alliance with his new colleagues. Hey.
But he's jumped into the separatist thing. And I want to ask you, because there's a couple of polls out. Leger has a poll that says 49% would vote no for separation, and you were telling me there's a crop poll where the numbers are even stronger in the federal.
Yeah, yesterday on French CBC, the poll was showing 61% of Quebecers would vote no, 39% would vote yes if there were a referendum on separation. It's been always like that for a long period of time. 95 was an exception, but we're back to the figures of the 1980 referendum. Is Pierre-Karl Péladeau's arrival going to boost the numbers for the Parti Québécois? Or it could have the other effect. As you know, Québécois is a very major player in the media in Quebec. They own the main newspapers, the main TV channel. A lot of people don't like it. They don't like the fact that they feel that it's not information that they're going to get, but a lot of propaganda in the next few weeks. So a lot of people are very, very skeptical about that move. Is that going to backfire? And also the radical left within the Parti Québécois, are they going to be able to, hold their nose for another 30 days during the election campaign? Or are they going to run away and support Québec Solidaire, the even more radical left-wing party? That's all possible right now. We'll have to see. It's too early to say, but already we see unions like the CSN and the FTQ that came out with press releases and press conferences today to slam Pierre-Karl Péladeau, saying he's one of the worst employers in Canada. He went through 14 lockouts over the last few years. So the unions are not going to let that go very easily. It's going to be a very interesting campaign from now on. His arrival is going to change everything. His opponents today were very, very active, attacking Pierre-Karl Péladeau, saying that he cannot stay as the main owner of Québécois, that he cannot put that in a trust, that he needs to sell his shares. The ethical commissioner.
I'm hearing that in English Canada as well on talk radio, and that part's going to be interesting. But if people can't tell from our discussion, we both work for Quebecor in one way or another, and we're still talking about this, and it's not all sunshine and lollipops for PKP.
No, absolutely not. Like, it's a myth that to think that, the big boss calls you and says you what to say on radio, on TV, or write in the papers. It's not like that, the main media work in Canada.
Eric, we're going to have to cut it there. We're out of time, but we will continue to check in with you on this Quebec election campaign. Fascinating days, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, Brian.